The year was 1876, and the wind moved across the prairie like a tide, pressing at the seams of a small ranch house on the edge of Red Rock Crossing. Inside, a tall widower named Elias Hart held his infant daughter Hope, whose lips had turned the color of winter plums. He paced the plank floor, tapping her back with a careful desperation, while her sister Lily cried in the opposite cradle. On the table lay a folded ribbon that had belonged to his late wife, Margaret, as if memory itself were keeping vigil. The knock came hard and fast, 3 strikes that cut through the wind. The door opened to a young woman carrying a small satchel and the dust of the road, Nora Hale, eyes steady, shawl pinned tight against the cold. She took in the room in a single glance. The panicked father, the blue-lipped child, the second twin wailing for comfort. "Please," Elias said, voice cracked and raw. "She can't catch air. I've tried. God help me, I've tried everything." Nora crossed the room without hesitation. "Let me take her." His arms resisted for the smallest moment before surrendering. If she stops. His voice broke in the space between words. "She won't," Nora said, her tone certain but quiet, as if certainty were something she could lend him. She washed her hands at the basin, turned Hope onto her forearm, and sent 3 firm pats between the infant's shoulder blades. When no breath came, she tipped the baby slightly forward, checked the mouth, and pressed 2 fingers in a gentle rhythm on the small chest. "Come on, little one," she whispered, steady as a bell in storm. "Breathe for your father." "He's right here." A wet cough answered. Hope drew a thin, wavering breath, then another. Color rose, slow and pink, over her cheeks. Elias's knees softened as if the floor had shifted beneath him. He pressed Hope to his chest. Thank you. "Boiled water," Nora said softly, already at the stove. "Steam will help loosen what's rattling in her. We'll keep her close tonight." By the time the kettle sang, the crisis had eased, but the room still held the shape of fear. Nora folded her shawl and reached for her satchel. Elias stopped her with a raised hand. "You came about the position." "I did. Reverend Cole Bennett sent me. He said the twins needed steady hands." Elias looked at the cradles, then at the fresh earth visible through the window. "You're only here for my twins, that's all. Don't expect anything I can't give." Nora's eyes stayed steady, though her fingers tightened on the strap of her bag. "You have my word, Mr. Hart. I'm here to care for them, not to trouble you." "Good," Elias said, "because I'm not a man for conversation or company." "That suits me fine," Nora replied, though her voice had softened a fraction. "The babies are company enough." Dawn slid in pale, and the ranch woke with it. Outside, frost clung to the fence rails, though the sun was sharp. Elias carried feed to the corral and repaired a splintered gate, while smoke ribboned from the chimney. Inside, Nora was a silhouette moving through practical work-warming milk, airing linens, humming under her breath as Hope slept against her shoulder. Lily's cries turned to small sighs. The table gathered simple things: cornbread, coffee, 2 tiny cloths folded with care. When Elias returned, he paused at the threshold, surprised by the smell of good coffee and the glow of an even fire. "You didn't have to cook," he said, hanging his hat. "I was awake," she answered, not looking up. "And they were hungry." He tasted the coffee, blinked once, and said nothing more. Outside, the sun crept higher over the frosted grass, hinting at the slow thaw of early spring. The first week passed in a quiet rhythm. Elias left before sunrise to tend the stock, returning to find the twins washed, dressed, and fed. Nora's hands moved with a precision born from habit. Swaddling cloth smoothed without a wrinkle, feeding bottles warmed just enough. The smallest sigh from a cradle answered before it could build into a cry. She spoke little unless spoken to, but she noticed things. The way Elias favored his right leg after long hours in the field, the gap in the kitchen door that let the wind creep in, the dent in the table where a cup always wobbled. One night, when the fire burned low, Elias passed the nursery door and heard her singing a lullaby so softly it seemed meant only for the air between her and the twins. He didn't step inside, but he paused long enough to let the tune anchor itself in memory. On Sunday, the road into town held the tracks of wagons and a thin coat of dust. Elias drove the twins and Nora to the white chapel where Reverend Bennett stood at the steps with a gentle nod. Augusta Price, keeper of the mercantile and the town's sharpest set of eyes, watched them from beneath a dark bonnet. Beside her, two women from the sewing circle exchanged whispers behind gloved hands, glancing at the cradle in Nora's lap. "Mr. Hart," Augusta said, as if counting ledger lines. "So this is your help." "This is Miss Hale," Elias replied. "She saved my child." "Children need more than luck," Augusta said. "They need judgment." "They'll have both," Nora answered. Augusta's eyes lingered a beat too long before she turned away. Behind her, the sewing circle women muttered just loud enough for the words "living in his house" to reach Nora's ears. Inside, Elias kept his gaze forward. "Ignore them," he murmured. "I've heard worse," Nora replied, settling the twins. "It's amazing how much people can say without knowing anything at all." After the service, Reverend Bennett caught Elias before he could leave. "Walk with me." They stepped to the side of the church where the wind was gentler. "She didn't tell you, did she?" Bennett asked. "Tell me what?" "That Margaret came to see me a month before the twins were born. She'd been having dreams she might not survive. Asked me to find Nora if it came to that." Elias frowned. "Why her?" "They met in Denver. Margaret said Nora had a steadiness about her, that she'd once helped someone close to her in a time of trouble. She told me, 'If I'm not here, see that Nora is.'" Elias's jaw worked before he spoke. "She never said a word to me." "She wanted to spare you the worry," Bennett said, "and maybe she knew you'd try to talk her out of it. Rain found the ranch that night. The roof ticked with it, and the lamp threw a soft circle over the cradles. Nora sat between the twins, rocking with a slow rhythm that made the room feel anchored. Elias stepped to the door, then stopped when he heard her voice, hardly more than breath. "Your mother asked me to find you," she said to Hope. "And I did." Elias's hand tightened on the doorframe. "You knew Margaret?" His words were careful, the way a man speaks around a wound. Nora looked up. "Denver," she said. 2 summers ago, she helped someone I loved. I promised, if ever she stopped, the sentence ending where the rain began. "Reverend Bennett knew how to reach me." Elias's voice was quieter now. "And you kept that promise." "I keep the ones that matter," she replied. He stood there a moment longer before stepping away, but the words stayed with him through the night. The sun leaned west when Elias met a rider at the fork 2 miles from town. The man wore a good coat, boots polished despite the dust, and a calm that felt practiced. He drew up with the smile of a man used to doors opening. "Afternoon, I'm looking for a woman," he said. "Dark hair, quiet. Might be calling herself Nora Hale." Elias kept his hands relaxed on the reins. "Your business with her?" "Family," the rider said. "Name's Jasper Doyle." His eyes were too bright for the shade they stood in. "She was my brother's wife. He's dead now, by his own hand after she shamed him. 3 years, I've been piecing together the trail. My father's gone, my mother too. There's no one left to put the truth right but me." His jaw tightened, not just with anger but with something raw, the kind of loss a man armors with pride. "I can't help you," Elias said. "We'll see." Jasper turned his horse and left a question hanging in the road behind him. Elias came home fast, dust high behind his galloping horse. He found Nora stacking split wood under the lean-to, sleeves rolled, face bare of anything but focus. "A man asked for you," Elias said. Jasper Doyle. The wood in her arms sagged a little before she steadied it. She looked toward the door, checking the latch, then back at him. He's my brother-in-law. Elias's voice sharpened. And? And he believes I killed his brother. He's wrong. Elias didn't move. Then tell me. She drew a breath and spoke, haltingly at first, then with a measured rhythm. My husband was a man who could charm a room and then turn on it in the next hour. He drank, and when the drink didn't make him mean, the disappointment did. He wanted children. I wouldn't bring them into a house where kindness wasn't certain. She looked at her hands. A friend tried to help me leave. My husband struck him. A poker, again and again, until he didn't move. I stepped in, and he turned the poker on me, broke my wrist. Elias's fists curled, slow and deliberate. And then, my husband told anyone who'd listen that I'd killed the man. And they listened. Her voice was low now. Months later, he drank himself to death. Jasper has carried his story like scripture ever since. Do you have anything that proves your word? Elias asked. Her hand hovered over the worn leather satchel resting on the small table beside the doorway, fingers flexing once before she unlatched the brass clasp. A letter, she said, voice quieter. Confession. Sent to a friend of the bank before they closed ranks. Reverend Bennett copied it. Another copy exists, far from here. Elias read the lines twice. Somewhere between the words, he felt the ground of his certainty shift. He set the letter down. You won't run, he said, not while I breathe. Her answer was a small nod that changed the air. Elias visited Silas Boone at the livery, and Augusta Price at the mercantile, moving through town with his hat brim low, listening more than speaking. He learned Jasper had taken a room and had a way of buying quick friends over rounds of whiskey. Back at the ranch, Nora kept the twins close. She taught Elias the quiet rituals of breath steam, tincture, patience. He showed her how to set a fence post true. Between them, the twins slept and woke and grew. Spring thaw turned the prairie from brittle gold to the first green blush of new grass. Lily learned to grip her father's finger, hope startled less often in her sleep. Days slipped into weeks, the rhythm of work and care slowly braiding trust between the four of them. The day the storm came in, it did not bring rain. It brought a wall of dust that turned noon to late afternoon. Elias drove into Red Rock Crossing with the letter in his coat. He did not tie his horse at the rail. He kept the reins looped on his wrist. Jasper stepped from the hotel porch as if the timing were his design. Mr. Hart, he said, tell me where she is. You're not taking her, Elias answered. Jasper's hand rested near the iron at his hip. You aim to make town business of it? It already is, said Reverend Bennett, crossing from the chapel with Augusta Price beside him, her jaw set. We will hear the truth in daylight. The dust thickened, scraping at throats. Doors along the street clicked shut, then opened again when faces pressed to gaps. Jasper took 2 steps into the street. She murdered a man, he said, voice carrying over the grit. She broke my brother. Elias's reply was flint striking steel. She defended herself against a man who'd lost all measure. You know it. Jasper's eyes narrowed. I know my brother's dead. Augusta stepped forward. And I know the truth. She lifted the envelope. Your mother sent this to me when she feared you wouldn't stop. It's his confession, Jasper, his own words. If you have any shred of decency left, you'll read it. Jasper laughed once. A short, brittle sound. Letters can be forged. Elias pulled the second copy from his coat. 2 letters, 2 different hands receiving them. Same words. The murmurs from the boardwalk swelled. A rancher called, "Read it or leave, Doyle." For a long moment, the town breathed dust. Jasper looked from the papers to the faces willing him to be the man he kept claiming to be. He holstered his weapon with a motion that tried to look easy and could not. Family has a way of lying to itself, he said, almost to the storm. Then he turned, mounted, and rode into the haze he had brought with him. When the dust thinned, the sky showed a washed blue. Elias rode home with the letter laid flat in his vest. He found the porch rail empty of any signal cloth, and Nora standing in the doorway, the twins settled safely in their cradle just inside. "It's done," he said. Nora's eyes searched his face. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. He won't trouble you again." She let out a long breath. "Then I can put fear down." Elias stepped closer. "Stay, not just as hired help, as what we are already becoming." Nora's voice softened. "And what's that, Elias Hart?" He managed a faint smile. "Something worth keeping." The wind lifted her hair. His hand found her cheek, and this time she didn't flinch. She leaned into his touch, and their lips met in a quiet, steady kiss. When they parted, she whispered, "It seems we understand each other." "Not everything," Elias said, "but enough." The next morning, Elias brought supplies into town. At the mercantile, Augusta met him with a nod. "Word travels fast," she said. "You and Miss Hale will find fewer doors closed now." By midday, Reverend Bennett stopped by the ranch, bringing a basket from the sewing circle for the girls. A few other townsfolk followed suit in the days that came. Not many words spoken, but hands offering bread, cloth, or a neighbor's watchful eye. The message was clear. The tide had turned. Summer returned with birdsong, and the cottonwood shaped a circle of shade by the river. The morning had been all small tasks. Elias brushing his best jacket, Nora pinning her hair with the help of Augusta. The twins dressed in white cotton. By the time the guests gathered, the river ran bright under the sun. Reverend Bennett stood with a Bible, Silas Boone held Lily, Augusta Price kept Hope from eating a flower petal, and the town watched without comment that cut. Elias waited in a jacket that fit his shoulders like a promise kept. Nora approached in a plain dress with a ribbon at the waist and the steady joy that made the air feel taller. "You look like yourself," he said. "And you look ready," she said. They made their vows with simple words. When Elias slid the ring onto Nora's finger, it rested over the thin ridge of her old scar-like metal laid on a seam to keep a repaired board from splitting. Reverend Bennett closed the Bible with a smile. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Elias looked at Nora, then at the twins giggling in Augusta's arms. "You've been my family for some time now," he murmured, just for her. "And you've been mine," she replied. The kiss came without hesitation, sure and warm, met with cheers. Hope clapped her tiny hands, Lily squealed in delight, and the crowd's laughter mingled with the river's song. Later, when the work of the day was done and the lamps were low, the ranch held a different kind of quiet. The house remembered fear, but it held more than that now. It held the sound of two girls breathing, the murmur of a woman turning a page, the slow steps of a man who had learned to set his weight gently on a floor that had carried grief and would carry joy. "You're only here for my twins," Elias had said once, building a fence around a life he thought was finished. But the night the child turned blue and found breath again, the fence opened. Everything changed, not with a declaration, but with hands that knew what to do and a heart that kept its promise. The prairie listened, the wind moved on, and the story, told true, ended where all such stories hope to end, with a house that knew how to welcome morning.